Hello, dear friends, dear participants of this marathon dedicated to the benefit of the whole world. We have different time zones. We have participants even from Brazil. It's the time of another interactive session. And today we have our honored guest, Bhakti Bhagavatamrita Keshava Maharaj. He already gave the lecture in the morning. He is the leader of the South region. He is holding different programs. He is doing lots of programs in Russia and also SNG countries. Hare Krishna, dear participants, my humble obeisances. I'm also welcoming all the friends and well-wishers who are participating in this marathon. Thank you for your participation. This is the common input of everyone, so that we can increase the spiritual strength of the humanity, so that we can cope with different crises. If we don't have enough of spiritual force, then we cannot react in an adequate way for these different difficult times. So thank you very much. I suggest that we sing a little bit, and so that we have a good tune and a good common mood. So, and then I will reply any questions that you have, of course, according to my capacities. So I will sing first Panchatattva mantra, and I ask our team of administration to put it somehow. But I hope, of course, that you know it by heart by now, because this is the glorification of Panchatattva, of Sri Advaita, Srinivasa, Gadadhara, Nityananda, and Lord Chaitanya himself, because the Lord manifests himself through these five tattvas, five truths. And so we are asking their blessings. And of course, then we will sing Hare Krishna Mahamantra, because Lord Chaitanya brought it, this Mahamantra. And by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the person is capable to resist this negative impact, this negative influence of this age of Kali. And he will be able to sustain his spiritual health. And so it's very important for our successful service in this world. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna. So we can begin. If you have questions. Yes, we have. First question. Could you please tell what have you felt when you first read Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and Chaitanya Charitamrita for the first time? Well, I will begin with Bhagavad Gita. Actually, in the beginning, my first book was Sri Ishopanishad. I was a student and I was kind of searching. I got this big interest for searching the meaning of life, and I wanted to find the knowledge that can help all humanity. I kind of felt in deep inside of me that there should be such a knowledge that can help people to get rid of sufferings. And so I was trying to buy all types of different books with this goal. It was the end of 80s. It was still Soviet Union, and it was quite tough times, and any spiritual literature was was not allowed to be sold. Like Quran and Bible, it would be very difficult for you to get because there was this censorship. And so after this end of Soviet Union, there was a liberty of information in a way, free flow of information. And so there were different books which started to appear, esoteric books. There were different study books with yoga, with occultism, Rerich, Blavatsky. And so all of this I got acquainted with, but I felt that there is not sufficient, that is not whole knowledge, that there is no unity of all of it. And so once I bought 2 books of Srila Prabhupada. It was Teachings of Lord Chaitanya and Sri Upanishad. And in these Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, in introduction, I read that first you need to read Bhagavad Gita and Krishna book before reading this book. And so I started to ask this lady who sold me to bring me these other books. And so while I was waiting for her to bring it, took some time, and I read like 3 times Sri Upanishad, and there was an inner transformation inside of me that happened, and I felt that this knowledge is very whole knowledge. It's like really helping. It was so clear to me, and I was so convinced that people really needed that. Back then I still didn't meet devotees, I just bought at the market, right? This lady was not a devotee, just to notice. She was just selling books. And so in the end I convinced her to bring me Bhagavad Gita, and then when I read it, I really kind of felt that this was some kind of really holistic approach, really great knowledge, divine knowledge. And then after reading Bhagavad Gita, just a couple of weeks after, I met devotees, and I saw that these people, they also wanted to spread this knowledge. And like me, I was very enthusiastic to somehow spread this knowledge to people. And so it's been 30 years since then, and this is my 31st year of me being in this Krishna conscious movement, and I still carry this desire to bring this knowledge to people, and my desire only gets strengthened because I see how for real, how this knowledge can change someone for real. Transformation can happen. It can change their karma, their destiny. It can give the knowledge of spiritual life and happiness to it. And so, of course, there are many difficulties on this path, obstacles on this path, and even devotees, they feel different crises in their spiritual journey, and I'm very happy to assist them. And any people also who are searching for the spiritual path or seeking for some knowledge. So I'm very happy to share. And if there are any questions about this, I will be happy to reply. Thank you very much. Could you please tell us how these readings of these books can help us to better understand the process of devotional service? Well, actually, reading these books will help to bring our consciousness to the total different level. So we are trying these readings reading will help us to go to the conscious devotional service, to the conscious devotional service, not unconscious, because conscious will bring us taste, deep taste. Unconscious devotional service, it will bring, it is usually executed in a state of not being attentive. And when we are not attentive, unnecessary, there will be some mistakes which are then becoming the obstacles on the spiritual path. So sometimes we can neglect very important elements like devotees or deities when we are not attentive. But when we are attentive, when we are turned on, so to say, when we are consciously practicing, then we are receiving this spiritual taste, this experience. And books of Srila Prabhupada is like triggering this, to bring this conscious practice into reality. I see how these devotees who read regularly, they really start to experience that these books are alive, and that the books can enter their lives and arrange everything in their lives in a way that the devotees then are capable to understand all these truths that are described there. Thank you. Next question. What is the difference between the books of Srila Prabhupada and all other books? What do they have that all the other books they don't have? I do not know what do you mean by other books. There are some kind of mundane books, right? About sense gratification books. This is obvious difference then. When the books are about sensual gratification, they just only create more and more thirst for sense gratification, and do not satisfy this thirst, only creating more and more fire to burn our lives and just to make sinful activities and mistakes. And so in the end of the day, the happiness will never be achieved. And as for the spiritual literature, then it's like pseudo-spiritual literature. It's like very subtle literature. For example, Agni Yoga. They have elements of a more subtle development, but it's not yet spiritual transcendental literature, because transcendental literature, it's the knowledge of the relationship between soul and super soul, and this science is the transcendental spiritual science. This is the science about the soul. Now when it comes just to the gross or subtle bodies, it's material. So books of Srila Prabhupada, they describe this sacred sphere of knowledge about action of the soul, activities of the soul, especially from the beginning to the very topest stage of what can be ever attained. And so it reveals the personality of Godhead, of how He is. And that's why Srila Prabhupada called Bhagavad Gita as it is, as Krishna actually told it. Because Krishna is transferring this understanding. And so it allows us to turn on our spiritual beings, spiritual selves, and this is very unique because these books making from people devotees, and they will be this type of guidance, instruction books for the next 10,000 of years. Thank you very much. The next question is from Svetlana. We are reading right now Srimad Bhagavatam, and in Bhakti Vriksha we're discussing it between us. And I'm wondering if there is any progress about these readings, or to listen to Maharajas are more interesting, like more profitable. Yes, actually there is value in discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada actually said that Srimad Bhagavatam has to be read and discussed from different points of view, and Srila Prabhupada taught devotees to take different roles. Today we were reading in Charitamrita about Mayavadi and materialistic people. And there are people who don't even believe in soul, but there are some people who think that there is soul and they think that this is God. They confuse them. And so sometimes Srila Prabhupada would say to one devotee, you are playing now role of materialistic person, and you will be Mayavada person. And so he would make this type of debates, and devotees had to bring different arguments. And like this it was like special exercises that they can see that they can have more philosophically deep understanding. So when devotees are gathered together and discussing it together, because we are discussing based on the purpose of Srila Prabhupada, who is Mahabhagavata, he is the topmost teacher, master, spiritual master. So if we are doing it in a good mood, mindset of respect to Srila Prabhupada, of being grateful to him for what he actually gives us, then it's very wonderful. And yes, you are progressing like this. And of course, if you have opportunity that elder devotees can take part in your Bhakti Vriksha gathering, then of course this is very welcome, and you shouldn't miss this opportunity to get the association of elder devotee. Thank you. Next question. In the spiritual world, the spiritual body is different from the spiritual soul, spirit soul, or it's the same? Yes, in spiritual world there is no difference between the spirit and the body. The spirit takes the form. Here, the spirit soul loses its spiritual form, and so in order to somehow manifest itself, it needs some kind of cover, layers. It's like we're putting a glove on our hand, and so this glove moves as our hand moves, but the body is just this cover, similarly it's just the cover of the soul. And the soul is being just a little spark, and the living entity is getting this material body. Why? Because the level of consciousness is egoistic. It's like a temporary theater play. When we just wanted to play some role temporary, the person would wear this costume and he would play this role. Sometimes he plays and he enters the role so well that he forgets at this point who he really is. And similarly here we can forget about our real eternal position. But then there can be some really great representative of God who can come and who could point us that you are actually not this costume, you are not this body, and then he will turn our tendency, our attention from our self-egoistic desires to this service, to the service, and at this point his spiritual body starts to awaken. And sometimes we can even reach the situation when inside of this gross body, material body, he can already develop the spiritual body, and at the moment of leaving this material body, he will not even notice because he's already in the spiritual body, because the soul is awakened again, once again. It's like a spark who leaves the fire, the flames of fire. It actually loses its potency. It becomes dark and dies, but then when it's back to the fire, it again is sparkling. So similarly, the soul, it's the form of the spirit soul is being again reestablished, and then it again comes back to this relationship with the Lord, and this is the perfection of life. And so when the spirit soul awakens its nature, then the form, it's not different from the spirit soul. So the body is not different from the spirit soul in the spiritual world. So, next question. Could you please, if devotees split and separate because basing on them some material reasons, like on their views, and they stop communicating, how can it impact the because they cannot stand each other anymore because of some kind of opinions, material opinions which differs, how it impacts the spiritual practice? Yes, it's true. On the material level, we have lots of differences. We can find two similar people, even people who are joined by similar nature or similar interests. Even them, they carry differences. They are different from each other. So whilst we are situated in material consciousness level, we will always find these contradictions or imperfections. But as we are seeking this harmony, we think that our way of imagining the world is the one, and we are trying to make this harmony around us, and then so we are confronting the opinion of another person. But if people of course, due to Krishna consciousness, due to the fact that they awakened their spiritual nature, they will, if they start to look at each other from the spiritual standpoint, they will see these differences as beauty, as diversity, because on one hand we are one unity on the spiritual level, on the other hand we are different. Can you imagine? It's very exciting, like it's even interesting to look through someone else's eyes. And so this can be actually a source of society, or source of the harmony, or of full value. So spiritual culture is the culture of feeling oneness and having diversity as well, because we respect the diversity within this unity. But on the material platform, these differences, they irritating actually. We are all the time having tendency to separate someone from the family of God and to exhale others from society, from family, for some negative features, which actually brings the destruction in the society and destruction of this spiritual harmony. So it's really important to come back to our spiritual essence, to roots, and that like that we can carry on. Thank you. Another question, similar question. Can we see the signs of manifestation of spiritual body? How can we track that the soul is already awakened and that we are already acting as a soul? Well, the signs of awakened soul are actually wrote in Bhagavad Gita, yeah? In Sanskrit. This was 18th chapter. Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta means when the soul or living entity is feeling this connection with the Absolute or God or Krishna. So this sign of this connection will be that this living entity experiences the bliss, which is fulfilling him from within. The next one, the person stops to have dreams about future and lamenting about the past, because usually we are hoping for the future and lamenting about past only those who are unhappy at present. But if we have blissful situation, we feel bliss in the present, then we don't already lament and hope for the future. And then then this person starts to have this, he starts to feel other living entities as parts and parcels of God, and he sees through the eyes, or that equally them as the one who is dog eater, the one who is elephant. And this person now starts to deserve to enter this relationship of the spiritual relationship with the Lord. So these are the signs of the soul being awakened. And when you see these signs in a person, that means that his spiritual nature is being awakened. And then you can also notice if devotee has a taste to association with other devotees, to chanting the holy names. This is also a sign of the spiritual taste. And at the same time, he has to have a very like soft heart towards the others and being firm with himself. Then we don't want to experience the negative emotions towards other living entities. The person starts to have his heart more and more open towards others, and when he sees those who are lower situated than him, he tries to rise them, uplift them, and like to the elder ones he tries to serve. So these are the relationships of harmony then. And then such a person, he starts to see the unity of the whole God's family. He perceives it differently. So these are the signs that show us that the person is actually making a progress in spiritual life. Usually, the person is if the person is a devotee, he is usually not, actually he is elevated, he is usually not gonna show it, make a show to a lot of people. It will be very intimate circle that he would share it, only with those who can actually understand and appreciate it, and not envy. Thank you very much. Next question. For those who are beginning this self-realization path, we can then take all our actions as a communication with different representatives, avatars of gunas. Okay, we are trying not to communicate with gunas of material nature. We are trying to associate with Krishna, whatever we do. And gunas of material nature, we try to engage. By engaging the gunas, it means that the demigods will help us. For example, the guna of passion, should try to passionately serve Krishna. We should tamas, we should also engage our sleep. For example, if we rest to continue service, then the demigods will be happy with us. So we're not really directly communicating with demigods that managing the gunas. We're trying to help the Lord and his mission in this material world, and his main mission now is to help all these living entities to come back to the state of happiness, the real happiness that every living entity is striving for. It is only when it's awakened. And so when the demigod is seeing that there is a devotee, and he wants to go to the spiritual path, usually demigods, they are participating in life of devotees, They are usually trying to help. Actually, even without being devotee, there are 33,000,033,000 demigods who are managing our bodies. But we don't have to pay respect to each of them separately. We can't even have enough time. So what is recommended is that we water the root. If we are serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then all these personalities are satisfied, like we are watering the root of the tree, and we are gonna satisfy also his branches and trees. And so the metaphor here is that the demigods are these branches and the trees, which will be satisfied if we water the root.
Спасибо большое. Следующий вопрос.
Next
Каково
question.
участие души в деятельности человека, если говорится, что она спит, и тело действует во власти гун? И почему последствия в виде кармы приходят к душе, и она воплощается?
Why the soul has to incarnate here when the soul is sleeping and body are acting under gunas? Actually, when we say that the soul is sleeping, we mean spiritually sleeping. So it's sleeping in relation to the spiritual activity. She is not active spiritually, but she is acting. She is continuing acting for what? For self-satisfaction, for egoistic desires, for satisfying egoistic desires. So we're saying that the soul goes from this border energy. And so if the living entity is denying her spiritual nature, then it goes to the state of avidya, of ignorance, and it continues to serve, but it serves already for its own benefit, but it will never bring the satisfaction. Why? Because the living entity is created for the relationship with the super soul, for rasas, for the spiritual relationship. Therefore, material relationship will never satisfy the living entity for real, even though it can bring this type of shadow, which reminds the real bliss, the real pleasure, but for real, the living entity can only feel the real bliss only when it is awakened and spiritually acting. So I hope I answered your question. Well, the question was yes, that why the soul has to take another body, because it's not acting itself, it's acting by the bodies. Yeah, well, the living entity cannot act by itself in material world. There are here material energy, but then when it goes back to the spiritual realm, the spiritual energy is turned on. So Mahatmas, or great souls, those who are awakened spiritually, they are under shelter of the inner spiritual energy, and these souls are called Mahatmas. And this is the task, this is the goal, that we are awakened spiritually. But if we are acting from the material, on the material platform, the soul is losing its greatness, it's losing its spark, this little spark. The spiritual nature is almost not revealed. Next question. What does it mean that the soul lives in the heart of the living entities? How can we apply it to the trees or viruses, for example? Okay. Obviously, even bacteria and viruses and trees do possess such a place, which symbolizing the life. It's a center of energy. In the human body, in the area of the heart, we have our subtle heart. Our subtle heart, you know, there is an organ, right? There is an organ which is helping the blood to flow, right? Which is, by the way, not clear. Where does it take energy from? And so she takes this heart, this gross heart, takes this energy from the subtle heart, from the soul, who is situated in the different flows of pranas, of air, vital air. And so this is the main energetical point from which the energy is gonna be spreaded further on, like to the brain, to different other important centers, you know. There are like different energetic centers in the body, you know, chakras, like and then there are flows of air which support the soul. And so till the soul is covered by the false ego, by this very subtle substance of false ego, it is wrong, like a false self-identification. It self-identified itself with these subtle and gross bodies. So till it is happening, the living entity is turned into the action, into life of the body. Now, if the soul leaves this gross body, then there are already no the gross heart already stops also working. Also, the trees also they have this place where the center the center of vital energy is situated. Also, viruses they have this center of life. All living entities have these functions are manifested in a less or more. These functions of senses. I even saw once scientific like section, like phase of a cell, and I saw that inside of the cell of a human body there are different little things that look like, for example, also like organs in our body. You know, it's like a microcosmos actually. We have the human body, which is representing it as well. But where exactly situated, I'm not that qualified to reply. Thank you very much. Next question. Could you please tell if the brilliance of the Lord is actually having the personalized form? Could you repeat? If this impersonal radiance of the Lord Brahmajyoti, if he has also the personal manifestation? Okay. Impersonal manifestation of the Lord is the manifestation of his aspect. Like aspect is like a partial manifestation of personality. For example, if we take the fire, the light and warmth are also manifestation of the fire. At the same time, it's not the fire as a whole itself. It's just the aspect, it's the light, radiance that there is from fire and the warmth. But the fire itself, it's again another substance. Similarly, the personality of Godhead, he's a person, but his aspect of radiance, of this shining, his external manifestation, his part, it's not the full manifestation. Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls this impersonal aspect as God without energy. Impersonal, it means that there are no energy, then that means there is no personality. So impersonal aspect, it means this radiance. But this radiance is actually serving a certain basis for the sustaining the spiritual and material worlds as well. And so 3/4 of this substance, of this energy of Sat, 3/4 is this spiritual world, and 1/4 is the material. Such a proportion is given. Thank you very much. Next question. Is the amount of jivas growing, or because they are never born and never die, they can never die, the amount stays the same? This is a very interesting question. Yes, so since jiva never is born, because if we say that the amount of jivas are increasing, it means that someone is being born again. But that means that some jivas are born at certain point. They are not eternal.
Спасибо большое, тоже вопрос. Сейчас его читаю, так размышлял. Любовь задает.
So, next question. If we are all existing from the beginning, that means that Krishna didn't create us, and we were existing forever, eternally with him. Sorry, could you repeat the question? If we are eternally existing, it means that we should. It should be so that Krishna never created us, and we always existed with him. Well, we have eternal place in the relationship with Krishna. The living entity is also developing in its relationship with Krishna, so its service can undergo certain transformation in this development with time. So each living entity is expanding its service and trying to get better and better. We do have this memory deep in our soul. That's why when we have interacting here with some kind of saintly place, we start, or saintly person or saintly book, we start to feel that, oh, I knew that. For example, when I read Bhagavad Gita for the first time, I thought I had this feeling, oh, I knew that. So in material world we are situated mainly in the state of oblivion of our own position and relationship with the Lord. But on spiritual level, we also have remembrance and oblivion. Why? So that the leelas, the pastimes, can happen. Because sometimes you have to forget something. In spiritual world, the leelas are eternal. Like Govardhan Leela, for example, or Rasa dance. They're eternal, and they are eternally going on. And so, in order for the devotees to see them as new. The devotees they live through these pastimes again, and so for that he needs to forget, and this is done by the internal illusory energy. It allows to forget something so that there is space for this new things, that ever-growing taste happens. And devotees can forget there some things there, and then they remember. And so in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he is in the heart of everyone, and he is the source of the memory and oblivion. Thank you very much. Next question. What does it mean, Murti of the Lord? An external appearance on different pictures of paintings of Krishna can differ from each other. Is there any painting that that represents the best way Krishna? Well, okay, thank you very much for the question. Murti is the representing the image of the Lord, which is made, if it is a bona fide image, it has to be installed by his pure devotee, and Lord agrees to manifest himself in this shape because the pure devotee asked. And so from that standpoint, this Murti is not different from Krishna himself. Why do we need this Murti? Because in material world we cannot perceive spiritual Lord with these material senses. We have here material dimension. Our senses are very brutal, material. So how can we develop relationship with someone whom you cannot see? But when the Lord manifests himself in a form that we can perceive with material senses, that we can serve to, that we can decorate, that we can try to serve, bring some emotions into that, like that we receive opportunity to serve to the Lord and to the opportunity to develop relationship with him. And so from that standpoint, the Murti is the most merciful form of the Lord, because it allows us to perceive him in material world, and he is agreeing to come. So that's why in our tradition, in our tradition, we have this is allowed to worship the murtis. Actually, in Christianity, they also worship, like for example, paintings, or there is Christ who is crucified. In Muslim world, they have this special manifestation, which is stone in Mecca. They worship it. So it exists in other traditions as well. And so we need Murti. Second question, could you repeat it again? Does it exist a painting which is the most close representing the Lord? You know, whatever is the image of the Lord, even if it is made on the sand, it can be for us alive or dead. Even if we make the most precise image of the Lord or painting it, if our consciousness is material, it will not help. But if our consciousness is already spiritualized, then even a certain, even far away form can remind us of Krishna, and it will be all the images will be alive. And Krishna himself, he can be different also depending on which devotee it is. So by looking at this image with the spiritual eyes, we can see them live actually, and deities also will be alive. So in order that the image is the most representing the original one, we have to develop the spiritual vision. And how to do it? We have to chant holy names, and there are 4 levels of manifestation of a holy name. First, it is like nama, manifesting itself. Is when we already chant it without offense, we start to feel connection with the name because it's not different from Krishna. Then second is the manifestation, is the form. When then we say Krishna, when we feel the connection with this name, then we immediately have the form in our consciousness, and it's not something that we imagine, it's really naturally common. Rupa. Then guna is quality, yes, and then lila, his pastimes. And so together with the chanting holy name, we need to study Srimad Bhagavatam in association with devotees so that we can understand who is Krishna. We have to be initiated into this understanding of Supreme Personality of God, of His qualities, of His forms, of pastimes. So, like that, we are trying to elevate our consciousness and understanding of Krishna, and like that, when we look at the image where Krishna is depicted, we will start to see him alive with the spiritual actually Krishna. So I do not know if my attempt to explain it was successful. It's like we will look with different eyes on the deity, on the image of the Lord. If we look with material eyes, we might see lots of imperfections, like for example something is not well painted, or something is broken. But if we see with the spiritual eyes, then we can be really see how he's gorgeous, how he's wonderful. There are no imperfections at all. It's just perfect. It's perfection itself. So our perception depends on the spiritual initiation, depends on the spiritual knowledge in our heart. Thank you very much. Next question, unusual one.
Если сюжет, где Кришна смеется, а не улыбается, если есть, то прошу расскажите, пожалуйста.
If there is a pastime where Krishna laughs, not just smiles, if there is, could you please say one? Tell us one. Yes, there are lots of stories, and when Krishna is laughing, he is organizing so many leelas. For example, cowherd boys, they go to the forest because they have to graze the cows, and and sometimes they imitate the birds, they play games, they imitate frogs doing these sounds, and this is very funny. Madhva Mandal, he's you know, like these cohort boys, they take their lunch, for example, they place themselves in the forest, and then they start to feed Krishna. Then someone from the boys says, Krishna, this bowl is so tasty, close your eyes and open your mouth. And Krishna does, and the boy and the boy is putting in his mouth, instead of the sweet ball, he puts just blow ball, you know, dandelion. And so Krishna is eating it, and everybody is laughing. including him. Or another one, when Mother Yashoda is dressing Krishna with a very new, nice, gorgeous outfit, and then Krishna goes to play with friends. And then he gets the idea to go into the cow's dung and with and so the boys are happy and they do everybody, and then they then finish, they get hungry, they go to run to eat. The mother Yashoda is shocked, of course, with him being totally in the cow dung. So everything there is full of joy. Not that Krishna is smiling only smiling like calmly. No, sometimes it's like hasya, and it usually enriches all other races of Allah, like all other races. He really conducts so many leelas, so many wonderful pastimes. Thank you very much. Next question. Could you please tell why in Srimad Bhagavatam there are more pastimes with the Lord Vishnu, and how devotees come back to Vaikuntha, and it's almost nothing mentioned about coming back to Goloka Vrindavana? You know, first 9 cantos help us. All 10 cantos are connected with Krishna, actually. Every syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam is a manifestation of Krishna. But this we can understand only when we study rightfully, in a well way, thoroughly, the first 9 cantos. Actually, Vishnu is Krishna himself, it's just manifestation in a specific way. So all of these stories which are described there, they allow us to develop a certain qualification so that we can perceive in a good way the 10th canto. So that's why we have to study first 9 cantos. He's supposed to understand that Lord Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead in a right way, and that will allow him to understand the 10th canto, where Krishna does not behave himself as the magnificent Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, but that we will be protected from thinking that he's a common, someone ordinary, and protect us from bringing our mundane experience to the spiritual, most elevated pastimes. So then the devotee will be able to perceive the actual tastes of the spiritual tastes, and he will be able to be awakened for the rasas. This is the path. Thank you very much. Next question. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's speaking about Satya Yuga. Does that mean that our planet will not be destroyed before Satya Yuga? You know, the full destruction of the universe is taking place. Partial destruction of universe is taking place during the day of Brahma, when it's partial destruction. During his day, there are different flows, but then when he goes to sleep and then he wakes up, he creates it from the beginning again. And so one day of Brahma is thousands of these Satya Yugas. There are cycles of 4 yugas, right? Satya, Dvapara, Treta, and Kali Yuga. And so now, since we are not yet approaching the end of day of Brahma, the next cycle starting with Satya, implies that before it there will be some purification, maybe partial destruction, but not total destruction. There will be more after the Satya Yuga comes. There will be more sattva, more virtue. It will be manifested. But when the day of Brahma finishes, now from what I remember, it's 29th cycle, because Krishna comes himself with Lord Chaitanya. So you can imagine from 29 day to... So in the end of this Kali Yuga, there will be Kalki Avatar who will come and who will destroy everybody, because everybody will be already like animals. So he will purify everything, and Satya Yuga will begin. Thank you very much. Next sub-questions. First one. Protection, it's translated like Raksha. At the same time, Rakshasa is the demon. How not to overdo the protection so that we don't become Rakshas? Yes, you know, actually, Rakshas is a different word in Sanskrit. Rakshas is a person who is like human-like, but he is a form of life that eats by the blood of other humans. And Rakshitil is actually another word in Sanskrit, and it gives the protection, like Kshatriya. Kshatriya gives protection. It's a conscious devotee, it's not a Rakshas. If Rakshas becomes a king, it's a very dangerous situation, because he will drink blood of his people, he will exploit. But the real king, he is serving their subjects. And so he makes everything in a way that everybody can progress, possibility to progress to the spiritual life. This is the real task of a real Kshatriya king. And so like this, he protects his subjects from this lust energy and from Kali energy of Kali, from the energy of this sinful satisfaction. He tries to create the condition that people are purified. Thank you very much. Next question. In Srimad Bhagavatam's 10th canto, I have a question. I wonder why Lord Shiva allows for the living entities to fulfill even their lowest desires, even though he knows for what bad results it will bring. Yes, you know, Shiva gives certain empowerment, but these powers will be very quickly destroyed that Shiva bestow. Once Srimati Radharani asked Krishna, I heard in Srimad Bhagavatam that Shambhu or Shiva is the best from Vaishnavas. But how can we call him the best of Vaishnavas? Can you take a look at him? He, like externally, his tilak is even kind of Mayavadi tilak. And Krishna said, you don't understand anything. Shiva, he is a wonderful devotee. Yes, he puts this external tilak, but why? He does it to be himself, to come to these fallen ones, so that he can help them to purify them so that they can take shelter of him, and he is trying to help them to take out them of this ignorant state. Srimati Radharani said, okay, they are right, but then look at what he wears. Look what he has, like the scorpions, snakes. What is that? And Krishna said, oh, you don't understand. He does put all of these external things, and Vaishnavas usually don't wear this type of clothes that he has these skeletons, but because again he wants to help these most fallen ones so that they can be attracted to him, and they take him for one of them, and because he's Vaishnava, he helps them to develop gradually a certain bhakti. Radharani says, okay, but then look at what he eats. All Vaishnavas take prasadam, and he takes this rotten fruit, some kind of fruits, rotten. And you know, you don't understand. Shiva thinks that the best should be offered to me, and himself he eats whatever no one will offer to me. He just wants to sustain his body, and that's all. Srimati Radharani said, okay, but look at him. Devotees usually live at the holy dham. And where does he live? He lives in this crematorium. But you don't understand. He wants to give this mercy to these ghosts and different spirits, but he does want to help them to get out of this bad state. And Srimati Radharani said, okay, I see everything, but look, but he executes the material desires. He's so easy to satisfy. And Krishna said, you don't understand, Srimati Radharani. Shiva is constantly occupied by chanting my holy names, and for him it's eternal bliss. And when someone comes to him asking for something material and interrupts him from his bhajana, he says, okay, fastly, what do you want? And then he gives, and then he just doesn't want to be interrupted. So then Srimati Radharani was amazed. So it's very difficult to understand the mindset, the mood of Lord Shiva, because it's very difficult tattva. Even Krishna is amazed that he's dealing with the most ignorant personalities, and Shiva gives these benedictions with powers for demoniac persons just because he knows that these blessings, these powers will destroy themselves in the end. So we cannot judge Shiva just externally. There is a really deeper meaning to it all. Thank you very much. Then the next question. What to do when you have some doubts rising, and I lack spiritual powers, and I have material desires, and I don't have enough determination, there is laziness. In order for that the doubts are disappear, we need association such as Sangha, where this sad will destroy our doubts. So you have to try to find these friends and friendships and association where you can harmonically develop together, and you can nurture your spiritual faith, and also try to get some education in association with devotees. That will also help to be stronger and more determined, and also always be eager to association with the serious devotees, with the which will provide you with the spiritual deep experience. You will, because if you don't have this deep spiritual realization, then you will always have doubts. In order to feel the taste of honey, you have to open the pot of honey. You cannot lick it just from outside the glass. You have to try to go deeper, try to follow the process, try to associate with the serious devotees. If you receive just a drop of this experience, even if after you have some doubts, this experience, spiritual one, will protect you, because you will surely know it exists. It will be enough. And of course, it's very important to beg Krishna, to pray, Krishna, without you I cannot do. I do whatever is needed, whatever is favorable in my life, and I will reject everything that is unfavorable. Try to find a mentor, a devotee, who will help you and guide you in your material life as well. Thank you very much. Next question. Does Brahma have dreams when he has his night time? And when the morning comes, he has to begin to create from the scratch? Yes, when Brahma wakes up, he has to create the universe again. Actually, some part still remains after his sleep, but he has to recreate another part. And so when Brahma sleeps, probably he sees Leelas of Krishna, because he is a great devotee, he is a pure devotee. Our Brahma is a pure devotee, so he is meditating on Leelas of Krishna, of pastimes. And then he continues his service. But I do not recall in scriptures which types of dreams exactly Brahma is seeing. I suppose that as he's a pure devotee, he sees during his sleep Leelas of the Lord. Thank you very much. Next question. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, Shiva calls Krishna of the true self. Does it mean that the real self of each mortal person is the Lord Krishna? Yes, there is a true self, which is Krishna, the Lord, and then there is a true self, is also living entity. So there is one who governs this body, this is the Lord, and then there is living entity, also true self. And the living entity is dependent, whilst the Lord is, because the living entity is known only this body, but the Supreme Lord, he knows all the bodies. He's not dependent. And so the living entity is the part and parcel of the Lord. And in that sense, it is one with the Lord. At the same time, it is one and different. From the standpoint of oneness, the Supreme Personality is also us, true self. But we have to look also from the standpoint of difference. In order to have the process of seva, of service, devotional service, so living entity is at the same time feeling unity with the Lord and different from him. Unity because the living entity tries not to have different interests or desires from the Lord. This is unity of the absolute. And when the living entity is acting in this state of unity, it's like the it's like the absolute truth is acting, because the Lord then acts through this devotee. That's why these devotees are called Sakshad Hari, the one who is like a spiritual master, who is a representative of the Lord. Sakshat Hari, the one who is direct representation, a manifestation of the Lord, because the Lord speaks through his mouth of his devotee. But it does not mean that he is equal to the Lord in all senses. Of course, I hope that this can reply your question. Maybe we can look at it deeper if needed. How it is determined? What determines where we go, to the Vaikuntha planet or to Galoka Vrindavana? Where does Jiva go? This is determined. This is determined by which state of existence we remember in the time of our death. So in the time that we are leaving this body, the living entity will be concentrated on the magnificent service to the Lord, which is represented in Vaikuntha, then it will go to Vaikuntha. If the person has the desire to reach Vrindavan, and there is certain taste to it, but he's lacking still qualification, then devotee can get birth in the place where the Lord brings his pastimes, so that this devotee can increase his qualifications. And then devotee is like he's already in spiritual world, but just this spiritual world manifested in material universe, on earth, in some universe, and like this he is going back. But if the eternal Svarupa of a devotee is real Svarupa of the devotees to serve in Vrindavan, then even reaching my Vaikuntha, the Lord will arrange it in a way that the living entity will not be satisfied somehow, and usually it will come back then. Gopkumara reached even Dwaraka, but in order to go to Vrindavan, he came back to material universe for the manifestation of Vrindavan here, and then from there he went to the spiritual world, Vrindavan. Thank you very much. Next question. In Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter 26th verse, Krishna says that he knows all living entities and no one knows him. How to understand the word "no one" in this verse? That means there is not such a one living entity who knows the Lord. And what about his eternal associates or the spiritual master? Is there someone who for real knows Krishna? Thank you. Yes, it's true. Krishna cannot be conceived by anyone, because Krishna is not limited. He has no limits. He cannot even understand himself, and his perfection is constantly ever rising, and it's not static. And we cannot understand Krishna because he is revealing only certain part of it. But Krishna can reveal himself to us to the measurement to which we are devoted to him. And of course, the person who knows him the most is Srimati Radharani, but even Srimati Radharani admits that she cannot finalize this process, as he is not conceivable. And that feature of him not being able, that we cannot understand him, it is creating his feature of being all attractive. Every day, each moment, he is ever new. So Krishna is not conceivable like that. It's an eternal process. Krishna is eternally expanding, and devotee is eternally trying to understand him, to conceive. And in that sense, there is not a final stage of this process. It's not static. It is ever changing. Thank you very much. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, when Shri Krishna is meditated on personality of Godhead, did he meditate on himself? Yes, it is said that Krishna is meditating on himself. So it's a very simple answer, because the question is very simple. It was written that Krishna meditated on his own self, on his energies. Thank you very much. We have only a few minutes left. We would like to ask you to give us certain wishes to the participants of this marathon. We would be curious to hear maybe a story of Sankirtana, if you could just share something. Well, I would like to wish everyone to keep the sincerity on this path and to learn how to keep your enthusiasm even at difficult tests and times, because these tests is the part of spiritual life, and you have to perceive it in this way. Even if you have hardships, even if you have difficulties, it's important part of it. If you perceive it in this way, we can only do this only in the mindset of the sincere disciple. If a person keeps this position of sincere disciple, then even the pain will not be suffering, because the suffering only comes when we don't understand what is going on. But when we understand that this is the happiness of the spiritual path, then if the person even experiences pain, he will not feel suffering from it. He will feel joy. Why? Because the spiritual process is a joyful process. And if we lose in this joy of spiritual process, we can usually lose it due to our pride, due to some offenses committed. This can take us out of this mood of disciple. And then but we have to be consciously trying to bring ourselves in this good mindset. You know, when I was a young starting devotee, I had a temple president, and I was a young brahmachari, a young student. And at certain point, I noticed that this temple president was chastising me very strongly, but for nothing. Like, for example, I would do service all day through, and he would approach me and he would tell me, "You don't do any service." And I did a lot of service. I didn't even have a good, nice time to repeat to chant my rounds. First, I was offended, but then I started to wonder. I've heard that Krishna manifests himself through the elder devotees. So, if Krishna manifests himself through the temple president, why I feel unjustful? So I started to meditate, and I was trying to understand why I have this. And so then I got this realization that he usually behaved in that way when my only times when my spiritual mindset, when my disciple mindset was weakened, when my mood of devotion was weakened, maybe because I was not chanting well my rounds, or I stopped reading books, or I've made some offenses. And so one morning I decided to check it out. After morning Mangalarati, I went to distribute prasadam to devotees, and and then I came back, and he approached me and he said, "Where are you going? Where are you driving? You are not doing anything." And so I thought, I was surprised, but as I promised to myself that I will check, I decided to make experiment till the end. I started to read books, and I started to do japa more carefully, and I dedicated time to the sadhana. And so then he came, approached me, and he said, "Yes, your service is very good. Actually, what usually elder devotees do not like, they do not like our mindset, which is not good, or not mindset of service or a disciple. And because they might not understand this consciously, they might express it in different way." So once I realized it, my relationships with my leader are totally transformed. First of all, I stopped being upset with him or offended, and I started to see him as someone through whom Krishna speaks to me. So if we take this position of a disciple, then even things when they feel unjustful, they become justified, because in material sense you will never reach some justice. So try to be stable in this mood of disciple, and then you will have wonderful journeys, and your life will have different very interesting events. Your life and your spiritual path then will be joyful. Yes, there will be some hardships, some pain, everything will be, but it will not be suffering. It will be part of the joyful process. So we have to tune on that, and we have to try to sustain our relationships with those devotees who are in this similar mindset. Thank you very much. I was very happy to associate with you. I wish you all the luck on your spiritual path. Thank you very much for your time that you dedicated to this marathon, for your mood, for your experience and realizations. We wish you all the best. Thank you very much.